Hello students, welcome to PW OnlyIAS English channel. I'm Harpreet Singh with the daily analysis of The Hindu, and today we're going to analyze the newspaper of 17th of September 2024. Let's begin the analysis. The topics that have been taken for today's analysis are persons with disabilities, renewable sector, Article 370, and the editorial dealing with the climate debate. Let's begin with the analysis. Now, you would note that in yesterday's newspaper also, there was this particular article. CIC asked the railways to disclose a list of staffs with disabilities. This is yesterday's 16th of September's newspaper article. And this is today's films to be accessible to persons with disabilities. Now, please note it down very carefully. Whenever a particular topic is being repeated again and again, the person who is making the questions definitely notes these things. So the persons with disabilities is coming repeatedly in the newspaper. They are a vulnerable sections in the Indian society, and that is why it becomes very important. A question can be made on, let us say, the persons with disabilities in the mains examination and also in your preliminary examination with respect to a certain scheme or certain act. So let us deal and understand or study something about this topic, persons with disabilities. Now, who are these? According to the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016, a person with a disability is someone who has long-term impairment that affects their physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory abilities. This is a definition that has been given by the Right of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016. Now, please note that there are four main categories, though there are various subdivisions also with respect to the disabilities, but there are four main categories of disabilities. First, behavioral or emotional. Second, sensory impaired disorders. Third, the physical, and fourth, the developmental. Now, when we see, remember one thing, that whenever you are studying a topic, had you read this topic, for you it would have been, okay, something related to films and persons with disabilities, but from an examiner's point of view, is going to take this as a keyword and make a question on that. That is why we are here to help you analyze those intricacies which are required with respect to the articles that you're reading. Having studied what the definition is, let us move forward. What is the status of the persons with disabilities? See, according to the census 2011, India has close to 2.6 crore persons with disabilities, which make up 2.21% of the total population. Now, that was 2011. Now we have the National Family Health Survey data from 2019 to 21. They say that 4.52% of the total population of India is suffering from one or the other kind of disability. Now, if you see, we would see a rapid jump. This is actually a point of concern. That is why we need to know the status, we need to know the challenges they are facing, and what is the government of India right now doing to resolve that issue. So let's move ahead in this topic. What are the challenges basically the people with disabilities that face? First, inadequate infrastructure. Now, according to the Ministry of Social Justice report, to 2018 report, they say only 3% of the buildings in India are found to be fully accessible. For example, if you want to enter a building, if the ramps are not there and a person cannot walk, if the wheelchair is there, so how can you take that particular person inside a building if a particular ramp is not present? So we have to see whether adequate infrastructure is present for the people who have various kinds of disabilities. And according to the Ministry of Social Justice report, say merely 3% of the buildings. So this is one of the major problems that we are facing. Next, limited access to information and communication. Now see, lack of braille signs, sign language interpretations, audio descriptions, these things and facilities are not available everywhere. For example, if you see the Vande Bharat train, we see that braille signs are present along with the seat number that is present. So it basically helps the people with, let us say, visual problems to identify their seats. But do we have such kind of braille languages or infrastructure present everywhere? No. That is why we realize that there are a lot of limited access to the information, communication, infrastructural issues that are present. Let's move ahead. Educational barriers. These are reports by the Ministry of Education also. These are certain reports we have seen from the United Nations also. Now see what is the basic data that we have presented here. 45% of the disabled people are illiterate in India. That is a humongous number. Next, 62.9% of the disabled people between the age of 33 to 35, which was surveyed, have never attended schools. The reason behind it was there, let us assume they're visually blind or some other kind of disablement is there. Either they could not go to the schools, or if they are blind, or let us say they're suffering some form of visual impairment, there were no special proper books that were available. So that is what happens. They, even if they do not have the money to afford special schools, then that again a crisis situation arises. So what happens is that over here we see illiteracy of that humongous number, and then 62.9 have never attended school. So automatically the next outcome would be there is an issue that they will not be employable also. So let's see. Employment issue. See, we just now saw 2.68 crores people with disabilities are present in India. Out of them, only 1.3 crores are employable in one or the other way. Out of the 1.3 crore, only 34 lakhs have been employed. Now, that employment also doesn't mean that they might be in very good positions. They might be in various kinds of employment. But again, we can take that they are employed at least some or the other way. Just imagine out of 2.68 crores, only 34 lakh are employed. Now, see the margin. This shows the issue because now this will lead to poverty also and a lot of sufferings. So this is again one of the major challenges. Next, technology gap. Only 29% of the PW persons with disabilities own assistive devices. Now these assistive devices can be, let us say, hearing devices, walking devices, let us say wheelchair or such type of devices or any kind of devices depending upon the disability that person has. So we see only 29% has. So that means 71% have unmet needs. That means 71% of the persons with disabilities in India do not have those basic assistive devices. Next, digital divide. This is again a major crisis situation. See, according to the Web Accessibility Annual Report, this is a 2020 report. This is a 2020 report, which basically states that 98% of the websites are not meeting the accessibility parameters for the people who are suffering from various disabilities. Now that makes the World Wide Web out of the reach of the people. Now we as people assume that accessing the internet is so easy, but just imagine for them 98% of the websites are beyond their reach because of the various disabilities that they are facing. Let us say if we today also if we study, large majority of the websites are in English. Now, person who is visually impaired, for him he cannot see, so how will he access that? So various dimensions basically and problems do come, and among them digital divide is again a major problem. Now the steps taken by the government. Now these are important. See, Mental Healthcare Act 2017. This provides for mental healthcare and services for the persons with a mental illness and protect their rights. So this is a very positive way forward. Next is a Right of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016. Now this is a very, very important act which lists which defines what disability means, various types of disabilities are present, what should be done, what actions should be taken in case of any discrimination is there. So this gives a holistic picture of the protective and the preventive measures under this act. Now, when we move ahead, there is a National Trust Act of 1999. What does it say? It provides for the constitution of a body at the national level for the welfare of the persons with autism, cerebral palsy, mental retardation, and multiple disabilities. Now, this is also again a legal measure that has been taken to provide assistance to the people under these kind of disabilities. Let's move ahead. Rehabilitation Council of India Act 1992. Now, it regulates the training and registration of professionals working in the field of disability rehabilitation. So, this is again a way to assist the people on disabilities, also helping the persons who are suffering from disabilities. Accessible India campaign. This is a very a flagship program with respect to the persons who are suffering from disabilities, where to make the public spaces, transportation, information and communication technologies accessible to the persons who are suffering from disability. So this is a very important campaign that was basically run or being run by the central government. Next is PM Daksh Divyang Skill Development and Rehabilitation Scheme, that has been basically a flagship scheme by the central government for the rehabilitation and also the skill development of the persons who have various kinds of disabilities. Now, this was the things that you should have known when you are preparing for the civil services. Now, based on this article, do you realize that you have covered a topic of the vulnerable section that is basically mentioned in GS paper 2? It can also be asked in GS 1 and GS 3 also. It is not that. And from the perspective of ethics in GS paper 4 also. Now let's move ahead. Renewable energy sector will power India's growth. Now please understand, this particular article mentions about the renewable energy push that India is aiming at. See, we do not have to go into a lot of details. We just need to understand why it is being mentioned. So we will take a brief overview of that. Why the renewable energy push is here. Now, this article says that it is aim to make India a developed nation by 2047, and there is a need to push the renewable energy sector. Now, there are various reasons for that. We need to see. First, we need to see what is the energy mix or the power mix, or what is the scenario of the various sources of energy that is being utilized in India. If you see our overall scenario, we are dependent upon coal for that. That means coal provides more than, let us say, 50% of the energy. Next is renewable 28.32, hydro 11.59, gas 6.15, nuclear 1.68, lignite 1.64, diesel 0.13%. Now, do you realize that renewable energy comes in the second position now? Out of the renewable energy, you will see solar provides close to, let us say, 51%, wind 36%, close to hydro 4%, and biopower 9%. Now, this is the scenario when we are studying the power studies, or let us say, what is the contribution of various sources with respect to the energy mix or the power mix. And among the energy mix, if the renewable energy is contributing this much, this is a 2022 statistics. Now, moving ahead, you can just copy it, because these stats do come handy when you are writing answers in your mains examination and also in your preliminary examination. They can tell you, let us say, they can give you 4 energy sources and tell you arrange in the order or the contribution of the total energy or the power mix, or they can tell you which among the following contributes, let us say, is second in rank with respect to the contribution to the renewable energy. Then these things do come handy. Now let's understand what is driving the renewable push. Why is Government of India pushing for the renewable energy? Please understand, energy security. We are dependent on oil needs. You know that, for, let us say, various gasoline, or let us say petrol that we call in India, diesel and aviation fuel, and so many kind of fuels. So we are basically dependent more than 80% from the various other countries for meeting the oil needs. Now that makes India dependent on the other nations for their energy security. So that means us energy security can be endangered if there is certain geopolitical crisis that happens in various regions, as we are seeing in today's time in the Middle East region. Now, if we have our own, let us say, energy mix where renewable energy is contributing a lot, then this dependence, let us say, on the other countries will decrease. So it is basically to push to make India a energy secure nation and move away from the issue of energy dependence on the other countries. Next, economic competitiveness. We see earlier on, when renewable energy was being pushed, let us say solar panels were very expensive, and that time people used to perceive renewable energy as a means of, let us say, an expensive energy. But today, if we see, the solar panels are very, very cheap, and the various renewable energy, let us say the raw material or the devices that we have, they're very cheaper in comparison to, let us say, 5 or 10 years back. So now it has become very cost competitive. So people are moving towards the, let us say, the non-renewable energy sources. If we move ahead, climate change commitments. Now India, while meeting or attending so many climate summits and all, has made various commitments. And because of that, one is, let us say, under the obligation to push for the renewable energies. Under the COP26, India committed to reduce the carbon emissions by 1 billion tons by 2030 and achieving a net zero emission by 2070. Now, in order to achieve this, you have to push for renewable energy. So that is why I said climate change commitments push your, let us say, the strategies and policies for renewable energy push. Next is job creation potential. Now, according to the Government of India, close to 3.4 million jobs can be created by 2030 only in the solar and the wind power sector if it is nurtured and if we basically reap the potential of these sectors. So it is a way of creating more jobs also. So this is also one of the major reasons why government is pushing for the renewable energy. And also, you would see that so many startups are coming with respect to the renewable energies. Next is water scarcity. You will realize that according to the United Nations, India will become a water scarce nation by 2025, and we are already in 2024. And thermal power plants, that means we depend on coal for meeting, let us say, close to 51% of our energy needs. A tremendous amount of water is used in the thermal power plants, and already India will become a water scarce nation by 2025. So it basically creates a lot of problem. So push towards non-renewable energy basically helps us to manage the issue of water scarcity that will arise, let us say, in few years. Next is investment. Now, these renewable energy resources basically helped to bring foreign investment also in India. So various companies from, let us say, United States, even Germany are investing in India. So that is also a means of the foreign investment coming in India. So that is why government is also pushing or creating an environment for renewable energy resources. Now, what are the challenges? You would see land acquisition hurdles, because if you want to lay down a lot of panels, you require a lot of land, and land, if expensive, then what happens is that firstly, it becomes very difficult for you to use that particular land simply for laying the, let us say, the solar panels. Or in that case, if you want to have a certain project built there, if the land is, let us say, there are hurdles to acquire the land, then also it creates a lot of issue. Next, e-waste and waste. According to the various reports by the United Nations and articles by, let us say, the Down to Earth magazine have stated that the various parts that are used in the windmill are non-biodegradable. So what happens that they are produced, and when after the life cycle is over, they basically tends to degrade the environment also. Next, non-continuous. You very well know that, let us say, the solar power or the wind power are not continuous, do not supply the energy on a continuous basis. It depends upon whether there's a bright sunshine available, whether the winds are moving or not. So they're not continuous sources of energy. So that creates a risk or a problematic situation whether it is going to be sustainable or not, and whether it is going to meet the needs during the peak hours or not. Storage challenges. Now, if you want to store the energy that is produced, you need large batteries. Now, batteries itself are very, very expensive, and that again escalates the cost a lot. Next is geopolitics and minerals. We know that for, let us say, storage of, let us say, in the batteries, we require rare earth metals. Now, 80% of the rare earth metals right now present in China, and the relationship between India and China will dictate what type of, let us say, storage, or let us say what type of minerals that we get from them, whether they're going to provide it or not in case of certain crisis that takes place. So geopolitics is also going to influence your energy security with respect to renewable energy also. So these are some of the very important challenges that we come across. Let's move ahead. Next is Article 370. Now see, the article that is present over here presents that terrorism and Article 370 will not make a comeback. So over here, we do not have to be concerned about any political dimension. We just have to note a little bit what Article 370 deals with, because now the elections are going to take place in the state, in Jammu Kashmir. So it is important to have a little bit of knowledge about Article 370, just to refresh your memory. Now see, Article 370 was included in Part 21 of the Indian Constitution under the heading Temporary, Transitional and Special Provision. Now this was a temporary provision, not a permanent provision. So that is why we need to understand this statement, Temporary, Transitional, Special Provision. Now it granted a special autonomous status to the state of Jammu and Kashmir, allowing Jammu and Kashmir to have its own constitution, own flag, autonomy over the internal affairs, except for the matters which were in the hands of the central government, which were dealing with defense, foreign affairs, finance and communication. That means except for these things, the rest was in the hands of the Jammu and Kashmir government because they used to have their own constitution, right? Now, this basically tells you about the Article 370, which was a part of the Indian constitution. Now, the question comes, what was the need for having this article in the constitution? Now, please remember, Jammu and Kashmir was a princely state. First point is instrument of accession. Now, please remember when independence took place, at that time, Maharaja Hari Singh was ruling, was heading as a Maharaja for Jammu and Kashmir. So he wanted to be independent. Now, during, let us say, the time of 1947, close to the month of October, the tribal people from Pakistan, aided by the forces of the Pakistan, invaded the state of Jammu and Kashmir. At that time, because of looking at the situation, Maharaja Hari Singh basically signed an instrument of accession with the government of India. In that case, it will become a part of India where the internal affairs would lie with the Jammu and Kashmir state. On the other hand, the external affairs which we have discussed would be with respect to the government of India, and it will become a part of India. Now, because of that obligation, it required a special status being given to him. So that is why Article 370 was incorporated in the Indian Constitution, because of the outcome of the instrument of accession. Next is autonomy and the special state. Because at that time the leaders of Jammu and Kashmir wanted, because as an outcome of instrument of accession, they wanted a cultural autonomy, because the culture of Jammu and Kashmir is very different. So they wanted that culture to be conserved. So this was also a reason for adding Article 370. Next is negotiation and compromise. It was an outcome of the negotiation and compromise between the leaders of Jammu and Kashmir and the framers of the Indian Constitution. Next, temporary provision. Please understand, it would not have been added if the statement permanent had been there. The negotiation that took place was an outcome that it would be a temporary article, and in a long term, Jammu and Kashmir would be an integral part of India, where Article 370 would be, let us say, removed, which actually happened. So what happens is, because it was temporary, this was the concept that was in the minds of the constitution makers, right? So these were the statements. Next, when we move ahead, abrogation of Article 370. Please remember, by the Jammu Kashmir Reorganization Act 2019, what was the need? Because we wanted to integrate it was an integral part of India. We wanted to integrate it in a proper way, right? Because Article 370 was creating a hindrance in the proper integration of that crown of India with the other parts of India. So integration was required. Development. We saw that in spite of so much money being sent by the central government for various development projects, we were seeing that the development was not taking place in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. A lot of rampant corruption was there. So, in order to have Jammu and Kashmir reap the benefits of development, it was required that it becomes completely a part of India, and Article 370 is removed. Equality and rights. You would be realizing that under Article 35A also, there were various restrictions with respect to the property rights. Now, removal of that article also paved the way for equality of rights with respect to, let us say, women also. Like a woman of Jammu and Kashmir domicile marrying a man outside Jammu and Kashmir would tend to lose her property rights. Such types of discriminatory aspects were already present there. So it was required that equality prevails. So that is why the removal became mandatory. Security concerns, we realized that because Article 370 was taken as a means through which, let us say, separatist movement were rising because of that. Because they said, because we are already have a different flag, we have a different constitution, so we are not a part. That is what that perception had to change, because Jammu and Kashmir was always a part of India. So properly integrating it became a mandatory aspect or mandatory action that had to be taken. So these are the certain reasons which we see. Next, today's editorial is rights of the future generations must guide the climate debate. Now, please understand, this article, just when you are reading it, just read it in a way just to understand what are the certain terms that are present. If today's article, please remember, it mentions about the summit of the future meet that is going to take place on September 22nd and 23rd. For right now, for us, certain words that are present here, only that is important. Other things are just mentioned in a very proverbial or a metaphorical language, which just tells us what is the importance of, let us say, the future generations. What should their rights be when we're talking about the climate and climate change? Because when 22nd and 23rd comes, we will be having the various debates and the current affairs related to that coming. So we will be taking those dimensions later on. What this basically talks about is when you're talking about climate and climate change, the rights of the future generations are very, very important. Please need to understand what does this mean. We'll understand in brief, but with respect to the details, with respect to the summit of the future, it will be post 22nd and 23rd. So what does the article say? This article mentions about the summit of the future meet that is going to take place on September 22nd and 23rd, this very month. Let us see what it basically means. See, the summit of the future 2024, it is a high level meet of the world leaders to come to an international consensus on how we can deliver better present and safeguard the future. Something that we basically talk in sustainable development as well, that we need to have a better future and we need to fulfill our needs also without compromising the needs and interests of the future generations. So next, it aims to build on the Sustainable Development Summit and deliver on the action pact of the future. This will be achieved through an action-oriented outcome document that is packed for the future. So that means after this statement, after this summit, they're going to come to a conclusion that is pact of the future, which would be focusing on how the sustainable development future is going, how it needs to be implemented, what is the progress, and along with that, focusing on the rights of the people and their relationship with the sustainable development goals. So this, when we will be studying around 22nd, 23rd and 24th of September, we will be seeing these things coming repeatedly. We'll be going into details regarding this also and study them in detail. And then please understand, when we move ahead, over here the article mentions about future generation rights as a main theme. Now, what do you understand by the future generation rights? Please understand. One more thing. When we talk about the summit, please understand, it focuses on, this is another major thing, it focuses on the UN Charter, reinvigorate multilateralism, that means various parties working together, boost implementation of the existing commitment, and agree on the solution to new challenge and restore trust. So these are basically confidence building measures through which nations and the UN members basically come together to work together with respect to the issue of climate change, along with out compromising the rights of the individuals, whether they are in developed nation or the developing or the least developed. So when we are talking about the rights of the future generations, what does it mean? The rights of the future generation to live in a safe and secure world which is not blighted by the follies of the past and the present generation. So that means when the future generation comes, it should not be suffering because of the actions that have been taken in the past and what we're doing now. That means we need to secure their rights in a very proper way. This is what is the meaning of future generations. And when the climate debates are taking place, we should be conserving the climate, because today what our actions are going to affect the future generations and their rights as equal stakeholders to this climate and the environment and the earth as a whole. Along with it, when you go ahead, we realize certain treaties being mentioned over here. Let us see over here. The Maastricht principle, what does it mean? It enunciates the case for linking the sustainable development and the climate justice and discourses to the rights of the people. This is actually the theme of today's editorial. That means sustainable development as one concept, linking with the climate justice. That means the people who are facing a lot of issues because of climate change, their justice needs to be given to them. Let us say climate migration are taking place, which is not an outcome of certain bad deeds that are done by the people who are living in, let us say, the coastal regions or the islands, but they are suffering. So justice needs to be given to them, sustainable development and the rights. So this is the basic theme of this editorial, where they talk about what are the rights of the future generations, and we need to link the rights with the climate justice and the sustainable development goal. This is what you basically had to know in this article. You're not required to know other things because these would be covered in detail in the coming days. And now all this PPT would be coming in this particular page. One more thing that is mentioned is in the article in the last is overshoot day. Please remember, the day when humanity used up all the resources but Earth can generate in a year is now living in credit. That means, for example, Earth is producing certain amount of resources, let us say per year. In how many days we are going to consume it? The moment, let us say, we consume all the resources by, let us say, August 1, after that, if let us say 4 months are left, that means we are already extracting more resources from the Earth than the Earth is producing. That means we are living in liability. That is known as overshoot day. This is again mentioned in the article, in the editorial, which basically shows the problems that we are actually creating for ourselves, that we are consuming more resources day by day, which is creating a pressure on the earth. So this was certain points and articles that you need to know. This PDF would be present in this Telegram account. Please have a look at that. And this was the analysis for the Hindu from today's newspaper, 17th of September 2024. I hope you enjoyed the analysis. You learned something new. We'll make sure to bring more details, more aspects to make you better understand those topics. With respect to the editorials and all, you will be imagining that to what extent we need to go. Please understand what is being taught. It is enough for today's consideration, and what we do is already in detail, because we cannot cover everything in one article. So what we do is we tend to, in the coming days, relate those topics with the topics that were missed, so that you get a comprehensive analysis of the topics. So this was me, Harpreet Singh, doing the daily analysis for the Hindu for 17th of September 2024. Signing off, and as we all say, Jai Hind.